Hello, we are live. We are live, Halloween people, and we're so glad that you came out to join us tonight. And if you couldn't join us tonight, this will have a playback and you can watch it whenever you want. And we are completely live, so anything we say is just right off the cuff. We have not practiced this. Who knows what could happen tonight? I am Sadie Hartman, Mother Horror. I am the author of 101 Horror Books to Read Before You Are Murdered. I'm also the co-owner of the horror subscription company Nightworms, which I am in Nightworms headquarters right now, downstairs in the basement where we do all of the magic. With me today is Dawn Kurtagich and Kiersten White, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and also their books that we're talking about tonight. Dawn, you're up.
Okay, so hi guys, Dawn Kurtagich. That's Kurtagich like witch or bitch. I'm the author of The Madness, my debut adult novel, which follows Dr. Mina Murray. She is tasked with treating a mysterious patient who is an amnesiac. She is found wandering naked in the Docklands in London. And this woman just kind of intrigues her, but she's problematic because Mina has a terrible case of OCD and this woman is very much a bit gross and in her personal space. However, one day she gets an email from her estranged best friend begging her to come back to Wales because she's sick and she needs Mina's help. So Mina travels the 250 miles to Wales, a place that she ran away from when she was a teenager and swore she would never go back to treat her friend, only to discover that her friend, Lucy, has the exact same symptoms as her patient back in London. It spirals from there.
Ooh.
Yay. I love that book.
Thank you.
So I'm Kiersten White. My newest book is Lucy Undying, which is also inspired by Dracula. I take the character of Lucy Westenra from the Dracula narrative and give her a new afterlife. So instead of being abruptly beheaded by all of the men who love her, she moves through the decades as a vampire, trying to recapture a sense of self when everything that she knew about herself was ripped away, trying to find purpose and, trying to find true love because she's a vampire. Why not? So I pitched this book basically as justice for Lucy Westenra, but also Lucy gets a girlfriend. And I hope that I fill both of those promises.
I love that. I actually read the first couple of chapters like a while ago when I first got it. And then I was like, ooh, I can't wait for Gothic season. So this is Gothic season.
It's so funny that we both gave Lucy a girlfriend. In mine, she's an ex-girlfriend, but like she feels like she needs a girlfriend, right?
She reads extremely queer in the original Dracula. I mean,
absolutely.
At one point she references when she and Mina used to kiss each other. So it's like,
yeah, clearly it's obvious.
That's not straight. So.
I love that. I love just reclaiming those classic tropes too and putting a spin on them, reimagining them. But first I wanted to talk about Halloween because we're getting close. We're less than 10 days away from our favorite holiday. So I wanted to just ask you guys, and also just for everyone who's tuning in and watching, feel free to leave comments, feel free to leave questions. We're definitely going to get to those. If you have an interesting comment or question, like we can pop that up on the screen like this, and please do that. Okay. So how about Kiersten? Tell me about like maybe some childhood things that you did for Halloween and then ways that you celebrate it today.
Yeah, I mean, like every kid, I was obsessed with what I was going to be for Halloween, put a lot of thought into my costumes. My mom would hand make my costumes a lot of the time. My favorite was I was a Black Widow one year with like the arms extending from my arms. It was great.
I love it.
We had a neighbor who would hand make donuts. And so you'd always go over there and you'd get your donut and your cider. And it was just a really wonderful, like very neighborhood thing. I've tried to recreate that with my own kids, and I've tried to be the house that is like really exciting to go to. We always have full-size candy bars. I have a display table out front with like books for children, like depending on what your interest is, and even like a stack of books for adults. But the sad part of that story is we live at the bottom of a neighborhood on a cul-de-sac that only has houses on one side of the street. So literally no one trick-or-treats here.
Oh, no. I need the end of that story.
Yes, we usually get like maybe one trick-or-treater. Every year we're adding more and more to the front of our house, trying to make it visually very obvious that we are into this and you should come to our house. It has not worked yet, but we do every year. We have a graveyard in our backyard. It's not a real graveyard. I think that'd be against California code. But we make new we all paint headstones for the graveyard every year to add to it. And a couple of years ago, when I started working on Lucy Undying, I made one for Lucy Westenra that says "Forgotten but not gone." So she lives in
I
my
have to see
graveyard.
that.
Oh,
Yes.
I love that. And I
Pictures
love
on Instagram. I insist.
yeah, we need to see that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Amen. Oh,
Dawn.
that's so nice and wholesome. I wish I had a better story. So I was born and I grew up for most of my childhood in South Africa, and I didn't really come to trick-or-treating till I was about 10, and I stayed at a friend's house because it was a thing that you saw in American movies, but it's not a thing that we really did ourselves because it was in summer or like spring, so it was warm. But this one year I stayed at a friend's house and she's like, okay, we're going to do it because my cul-de-sac does it. So we go trick-or-treating and we reach this one house and this very weird guy comes out to his gate and he's like, do you want a trick or do you want a treat? And we're like, treat? And he goes, I'm going to give you a trick instead. So he takes his cigarette and he lights it, he puts it in his mouth, and then he like swallows it. And he's like, you're tricked, happy Halloween. And then he walked off and we were like,
Oh my God.
What Halloween is?
Super weird.
So, it's an odd place.
Yes,
for children
very
in South
odd.
Africa. But yeah, now in this country, I do the Halloween thing, but nobody comes, nobody trick or treats. However, we've got new neighbors and they've got 2 kids. So I'm like preparing for them to like knock on the door and I'm going to have this ball. It's going to be amazing.
Yes.
But again, it's not a huge thing in the UK. I have to come to America to experience it. I want to do it in Vermont or somewhere really colorful.
Yeah, I have actually noticed that. I've had other, British people tell me that they don't celebrate it as much. Like the stores don't carry all the fun things and.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I was younger, so I still to this day like don't go to haunted houses because when I was younger, I was dressed up as an angel. It was a really cute costume with the wings and I had a little gown. I was probably like, I don't know, younger than 10. And my dad took me to this iconic haunted house in our small town. They always like go full out and have full costume characters that are kind of just lurking around in the background, and you have to walk up the stairs to the porch and there's like some spooky person like passing out candy and you kind of have to muster up the strength to go. So I go with my dad holding his hand, look over into the yard, and there's like a werewolf on like his hands and knees and he's just kind of like menacing, and I didn't really think that much of it. I was scared, but I didn't think that much of it. Go up, get my candy, come back down. As we're walking down the sidewalk to leave and to exit the gate, he scrambles up on all fours and grabbed my ankle.
No.
Like,
No, thank you.
awe of Halloween. Like, you just don't touch people. And
Absolutely not.
I was done for haunted houses for the rest of my life. I always think someone's going to touch me, so I'm just out. Like, I just will never go to those again.
Isn't that a rule, though? They're not supposed to actually physically touch?
Yeah.
You probably do that. Oh, it's a kid. It'll be funny. He wouldn't have eardrums left if that had happened to me.
Yeah,
I would have just exploded and was screaming.
No, yeah, I definitely screamed. It was all over. But my kids are all grown now, so we just have them all over and we pass out candy and that kind of thing. So another thing I wanted to talk about, and actually Paula is getting us going on there, but we're going to start talking about some Gothic tropes that we like. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys open up with what inspired you to write Gothic and then what you love to read in Gothic. So Dawn, if you want to get started.
What did inspire me to write Gothic? I think it's the feeling of it. I think it's the held breath of the genre for me. It's also just so beautiful. Horror can be very ugly, and I'm very, very affected by aesthetics, probably more than I ought to be. But if something's ugly, I'm just naturally not going to want to explore it. So Gothic is just beautiful for me, and it's heavily influenced by mystery. I also love a historical setting, and often in Gothic books, it's a historical setting. I did have a think about tropes, actually, just a tiny bit before this. Okay, so creepy children.
Yes.
Love a creepy child, especially if they are singing or reciting a nursery rhyme.
Yes,
I find that's so good.
So creepy.
So castles, obviously, old manor houses, anything that's in the Gothic architecture. I also love a creepy attic or a creepy basement, especially if they didn't know it was there.
Yes.
And I love, just a historical setting. Those are generally the things that I love. Ghosts, obviously.
Yeah.
They're mysterious to me.
If people are looking for that aesthetic with the creepy children and also just aesthetics, A Good House for Children.
Yes, I want to read that.
The name of the author, actually, so if you remember, let me know.
It's not Tanner Dew, is it? No, it's not. No. Oh.
No. A Good House for Children. I will look. Kate Collins. I don't know, that popped into my head. I don't know if that's accurate, but does have a nursery rhyme recital in it, and creepy twins, which is another favorite.
Kate Collins, yeah.
Okay, Kiersten.
Actually, I think I bought that one because of your recommendation. I think I've got it here somewhere. Yeah,
it was my favorite audiobook I listened to this year, I think. Besides The Doll Factory, that was a good one too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what drew me to writing Gothic is part of it is just the retelling factor, right? I did Frankenstein. I did The Dark Son of Elizabeth Frankenstein in YA, and then Lucy Ann Dying. Oh, thank you. I do think it's my best. And then Lucy Ann Dying spans obviously like 1890 to modern day, but just trying to capture that sort of like, I feel like Gothic trappings are very lush, which, Dawn, that was such a good point. You don't get lush in horror very often, modern horror. And so I think that's why I keep coming back to Gothic, is that sense of atmosphere and that sort of lush romantic. I mean, even if it's decaying, it's still romantic. Like, I think about the house in Crimson Peak, right?
Oh,
and it was so upsetting, but it was also beautiful. And like all of the imagery in that movie was so beautiful while also being creepy and upsetting. And I love that like marriage, because I do think they go so well together. So yeah, I think that's why I keep coming back to Gothic horror, is just that mood and that atmosphere. And then, like you said, there's a lot you can play on with it. Like, you can write modern, you can write historical, you can include a huge mystery element, you can make it, very romance heavy. Lucy Ann Dying, I think, is one of my more like romance heavy books I've ever written. So yeah, I feel like it's just fun, and there's so much room to play within it, and there's so much interesting storytelling happening with different aspects of Gothic settings or themes. My favorite Gothic trope probably is the house. Give me a house as character. Give me a house as physical representation of the decaying, relationships or family line or health or whatever. Like, I want the house to be beautiful and to feel like the character in the novel. Two books that I read recently that did that really well. Obviously, The September House by, I think, Christina Orlando.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. I love that. And speaking of like creepy children with rhymes, and then I also recently read The Bog Wife by Kay Chronister, which is kind of more Southern Gothic, but it has a fantastic house, and the house is so representative of this family and what's happening to them, and was really well done. So yeah, I think house as character is my favorite Gothic trope.
Delicious.
And I love how they all have names too. I've recently just been like writing down every name of every house I run across in the Gothic, because it's just fun. They have like really great names. I really love a governess trope. So I love when like a new nanny is hired and comes to the house, and then there's just like this dynamic between her and the kids, but then also her and existing staff, which kind of reminds me of like Downton Abbey vibes. So you get like the upstairs, downstairs, with like the owners and then like the staff, and the secretive, tight-lipped stuff that's going on with whatever mystery is happening. Like, why did this child die? Oh, we can't talk about it. I love those tropes. That's what I'm living for these days. But Paula has a good question here. She has like a few actually that we can tackle. Do you see Gothic novels having a revival these days? And what are the subgenres of Gothic that we may be seeing a rise in readership? Magical Gothic, traditional Gothic, romantic Gothic.
That's a great question.
I personally just started reading it like 2 years ago. I read Wakenhurst by Michelle Paver, and it was the most delicious vibes I've ever felt in my entire life, and I wanted more of it, so I just binged like everything I could get my hands on. So yeah, I'm new. So you guys tell me, do you think it's having a revival these days?
I hope it is. I really hope it is. I don't know if my first book is considered Gothic. Maybe The Dead House. It's got a creepy house. Maybe. I feel like all of mine have been Gothic, and I just didn't realize it. I think I just naturally write it, but I really hope there's a revival. I love supernatural horror, so supernatural Gothic horror would be just gorgeous, perfect for me personally.
Yeah, and I think it lends itself so well to supernatural horror, but it also lends itself well to so many different kind of mashups. And I think that's the strength of it, and that's where you're going to be seeing more of it, is not just like straight up Gothic, but like Gothic horror, Gothic romance, modern Gothic, because taking that atmosphere and those storytelling structures and applying them to other genres, I think does really interesting things, and it gives a cool playground basically to create something that honors and participates in what came before, but also does something new with it in really interesting ways. So that for me is what I think is exciting, and what I feel like we're seeing more of is this sort of expansion of what kinds of stories we're telling with the Gothic overtones and undertones, and where we're moving with that. So that's always interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think also with the experimental side, you mentioned like modern Gothic. You could see more experimental books like We Used to Live Here in the Gothic space. That would be so exciting.
That would. I also see, like, because Gothic is so old and it's been like a tradition, Mary Shelley was writing Gothic, and so like it's like a very feminist, older genre of horror. And then we can get books like, all three of these books here, you guys, like, all of these have Dracula riffs, and Dracula is like so old. I mean, like Carmilla predates Dracula, so there's like, with your Kiersten Sapphic bent, and also you too, Dawn, that's sort of like Carmilla vibes a little bit too, so I feel like because it's kind of an older flavor, and there's authors, that have been doing it for so long, we can borrow from those and inspire from them something new and modern, and put a good twist on it, like you guys did.
Yeah.
I think there is a Carmilla, isn't there? Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just saying you can engage with it thoughtfully, right? Like you're choosing which elements you're pulling forward, which ones you're engaging with, and which ones you're saying that was very much a product of its time, and I am not interested in, Lucy being punished and dying for being an effervescent 19-year-old who isn't particularly useful. So she therefore has to die. And like, I like what you said about Gothic being inherently feminist, because so many Gothic stories are about women, right? And they're about women in dangerous and impossible situations that they're trying to get out of, but they're trapped. And so, I just think engaging with those, and part of it is bringing a modern sensibility to older stories, and which is its own thing to navigate. But I do think that there's so much opportunity there to engage with the traditions in thoughtful and meaningful ways, where you're using those elements, acknowledging what they have been used for in the past, but using that to subvert them also. So
agreed, fully.
And I think we're seeing more diversity in Gothic too. Like I'm thinking of where the Dead Brides Gather, and this is by Nuzo Ono, who is, she even says right here, the queen of African horror, so
fantastic.
We're seeing like a lot more diversity. I was also thinking of Danye Cole's debut this year, which is Midnight Rooms. This is like a fever dream Gothic, but it also just has like cultural elements in here that only Danye could bring to the table. And it's cool that that door is just kind of flying open, whereas I think before Gothic tended to be like really white, you know?
Yeah.
And we want to be able to hear voices in this space from, you know, all walks of life. I see that Carolina Flores is here, and we're eagerly awaiting your book coming out, Carolina.
So stop procrastinating your copy edits.
We are like Sadie and I are the queen of procrastination. We were talking about that earlier.
We did talk about that earlier in the green room. We were talking about how when we have a deadline that seems really far off, we tend to put it off until the very last minute.
And now we're in the thick of it and we're panicking.
Yeah. I would pretend like I can't relate, but
we'll talk about craft a little bit, you know, since we're getting into that topic, and we do have some time. So if you are currently working on a project, what is it? Let us know.
Do you want to go, Kiersten?
Yeah, I'm actually mid-draft of what's going to be my next book after Lucienne dying. I don't usually talk about things before they're done, but I've been talking about this one, like I've decided to let go of that. And I'm pitching it as Dracula meets Devil in the White City. Ooh. And so, yeah.
I'm already like, whoa.
Yes. So like I'm getting to research like the technological advancements in cameras and filming and forensic detective work, because the cusp of the 1900s, there were all of these big developments happening in forensic detective work. You have the 1900 Paris World's Fair, which wasn't the Eiffel Tower one, but had some really cool things happening in it. So I get to do all this really cool historical research, which I always say I'm not going to do historical again, and then I do.
But we love you for it.
Yes. Yeah. But the nice thing about adding a Gothic and a supernatural element is that I can have those sort of through lines, so it's not just the historical aspects, and I can fudge things a little bit because there wasn't actually a supernatural serial killer stalking the Paris World Fair in 1900 that we know of.
It should have been.
Yes, it probably was actually. So it's just been one of those really fun projects where it's enemies to lover and all of this like cool research that I'm really into. And yeah, I'm still very confident about it because I haven't finished drafting it yet. Once I finish the draft, then I'll be like, oh no, what did I do? But right now, I'm super in love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm drafting my November 2025 book, which feels really close. And I have to hand it in really soon. I'm still in love with it, but I'm kind of reaching that place where I'm like, oh, what have I done? But yeah, it is a wellness horror set on a remote Scottish island. So it's been a lot of cool Scottish research, and also a lot of research into the wellness industry, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I keep seeing all these wellness books and I'm like, right, I need to read these all to get the vibe. So that'll be in soon. And then straight away, I have to jump into my March 26th drafting, which is a folk horror that is very Gothic. So I'm like, is folk Gothic horror a thing? If it isn't, I'm going to make it a thing. But is it a thing? Great. Fantastic.
I think Grey Dog was definitely folky and Gothic, and also Bogwife was definitely folky.
Yeah, Bogwife is on my list to read. Yeah, I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah, and then like for wellness, I want to recommend this one. Ooh. It Will Only Hurt for a Moment by Delilah S. Dawson. So
that came out today, right?
What'd you say?
I think that came out today, right?
Yeah, this came out today. I read it like a couple of months ago. But it's a modern Gothic, and it's about a woman who goes to like an art retreat, and then the art retreat is like a summer camp for adults. But she realizes there's an abandoned resort on the property. And so she starts investigating with another woman, and they uncover like tons of secrets, and it has like a wellness trope to it. So
okay, that's probably next on my list then.
Yeah, you would love it. My book that I'm working on, where my deadline is December 1st, is called Feral and Hysterical: Mother Horror's Ultimate Reading Guide to Dark and Disturbing Fiction by Women. So for the last 2 years, I have done absolutely nothing but read books by women, and I have very close to 300 recommendations in this book, and it's all categorized by reading lists. So it's not a definitive, here's all these lit books you need to read. It's grouped together by tropes, themes, and vibes. Nice. So it's going to be like, hey, do you love, this kind of trope where a woman goes off to a Scottish island and uncovers secrets? Do you like this trope? Do you like this theme of Latin America, femicide in Latin America? That's like a whole thing. So I have like 8 books recommended for that. So I just grouped it all together in little.
See, this is the book we need, all of us.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. So I don't see any more questions in here. So if anybody who's watching, I do see there's a few of you in there. So if you have any questions for Kiersten about any of her books, but in particular, Lucy Undying, Christine, hi, yeah. Another horror yearbook, yes. But this time you'd have to get like 300 people to sign it. So, it would take a long
challenge time. Accepted.
Maybe I should make it a sticker book, and then like every person you meet could have their own special sticker.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for like book plates.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Mm-hmm.
That would be really
I love that you specifically mentioned Latin America femicide horror. Like, I feel like if I hear a horror writer is a woman from Argentina, I'm like, sold. Yes. It's going to be the most upsetting thing I've ever read, and my favorite year. Like, they are going places I feel like no one else is going. Agreed. And it's so informed by the history and the things that happened in recent memory. Like, man, it's so good.
Harrowing. Completely harrowing.
Yeah. And that's why I said, I wanted it to be really clear in the title that it's dark and disturbing fiction by women and not just horror.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we need to broaden that.
Yes.
That stereotype of what horror is. Like, so many people try to define it as something very specific when really, I mean, if it's dark and disturbing, we're lining up for it. There's a lot of crossover there, like I wouldn't necessarily call every single book in the book that I'm writing a horror book necessarily, but dark and disturbing, horror vibes, like it's horror for us as women, the lives we lead as prey in this world is very horrific, and we write about it in all of our stories. So
thank God for the space to express it, right? We'd all just go insane otherwise.
I mean, some of us are also like going insane, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, who's to say I might find what you think is not horror? I might find it horror. So subjective.
I think that's the hardest part about writing these things is I will have people say like, "How scary is it?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm the one who wrote it. Like,
it's scary to me.
Yeah, you could read Mr. Magic and be like, "Cool, that was trippy and creepy," or you could read Mr. Magic and come from a background of religious trauma and be like, that was so genuinely upsetting to read. And
amen.
I always know if somebody's come from certain backgrounds, depending on how they react to that specific book. So it is, I agree, Sadie. Like, I love the expansion of the idea of horror and what qualifies as horror, or what just is in the same vein and spirit. Because I think once you open it up, you open yourself up to such interesting books and such cool, unusual stories being told in ways that they aren't anywhere else. And I love it. It's my favorite.
Me as well. Like on Book Talk, there's this fever for like unhinged women stories. A lot of them aren't horror, but I would find them horrifying. And I have found them horrifying. It's interesting.
Ladies, what are some of our favorite Gothic books?
I mean, I love Carmilla. I love it more than I love Dracula. Don't tell Bram Stoker.
There's a Carmilla retelling, isn't there? Like a recent Carmilla retelling?
There's a graphic novel.
Retelling
that was fantastic. I'm sure there's also a book. I also, and I know that she doesn't need to be recommended, but The Haunting of Hill House and We've Always Lived in the Castle are two of my all-time favorite books in terms of capturing an unsettling atmosphere through an unreliable narrator. Like, I just think Shirley Jackson did it like no one else ever has. And I love her. I feel like she's the gold standard for me. And then this is one of those scenarios in which I forget every other book I've ever read in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pass it.
That's why we have Sadie. Sadie is our memory, you know?
Yeah,
For me, sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead, Dawn. You go first.
Well, I was just going to agree with the Shirley Jackson, but also two recent ones. Wakenhurst for me was just, I felt like, for me, it was like a perfect novel, completely perfect. And I just love it. I'm going to reread it on audio. But also Laura Purcell. I read everything she does.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what it's called in the US, but Bone China in the UK is what it's called. And it's the whole trope of like going, I don't think she's a governess. I think she's like a nurse or something. And she goes to this seaside house where all this weird stuff is happening. And then the Silent Companions.
The Silent Companions is a favorite.
Absolutely brilliant. So, but those are the only ones I can think of right now. I'll add more of those.
Laura Purcell for sure. And just as a secret, Laura Purcell is writing an essay for my book. So there will be essays by authors, and she is writing about Gothic fiction. And I want to mention It Will Just Be Us. If you're looking for a scary Gothic, definitely Silent Companions and It Will Just Be Us by Joe Kaplan. That book terrified me. It takes place in an ancestral home. It's 3 women, a mom and 2 daughters living in it. And the house replays things that have happened in it, like a tape that they can see with moving ghosts and parts of like the history of the house. And one of the sisters actually sees a ghost that she's never seen before, starting to manipulate time and history inside the house. And she's like, what is this?
Wow.
Ghost? So it's this mystery. It's terrifying. There's a creepy kid in it. I would not read it at night. Super scary. I also loved Katrina Ward's Little Eve.
I need to read that one.
Storytelling voice in Little Eve blew my mind. Like, I had only read The Last House on Needless Street and Sundial, which are not Gothic. And then I read that one and I was like, wait a second. This is her wheelhouse, right? Like, this is who she is.
Okay. Right. Sold.
Yeah, I loved that one. And then Wakenhurst, like we already talked about, and Fine Shade, which I just read. Oh my God. I can't remember the name because she's new to me. But it was a twist on The Turn of the Screw. So yeah, it's a far better novel because I didn't really like The Turn of the Screw by James Henry. So definitely check out Fine Shade. It had a romance. It had an unlikable main female protagonist who you kind of root for in the way that you root for Amy Dunn in Gone Girl. You know, where it's like, you are deplorable, but like, I'm rooting for you.
Oh, I love that. Wait, is it called Fine Shade? Like shadow, like shade?
Fine Shade,
okay.
yeah. It's the name of the house is Fine Shade.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes. What is this comment? Hungerstone by Kat Dunn is inspired by Carmilla. Oh,
I think that's the one I was thinking of, actually.
Yeah. All right. Well, in closing tonight, is there anything that you wanted to? We did have a giveaway, actually.
We do.
So for those of you who have been commenting, and anyone who's watching right now, if you want to comment and tell us your favorite Gothic book or your favorite horror book that you read in 2024, let us know, because we will be picking you to win either this book or this book or this book, and they will be signed by us. Please let us know also if you already own one of these or have a signed one, that we don't want to send you a duplicate. We want to make sure everybody gets one that they don't have. So comment. These will stay in here because this is going to have a playback. So just because people didn't get to catch it live, they can watch it later. But all the comments will live here, and we'll pick people to win. Yeah. So any other comments about your books or what you're working on or where we can find you online if we want to do that?
Yeah, Lucy Undying is available now. The book I talked about won't be out until 2026, but I will have a new novel out next fall that I can't talk about yet.
Oh gosh.
So cool. Keep an eye out, I guess.
Yes.
And you can always find me on Instagram at author Kiersten White, same on Threads or my website. Yeah, I like geeking out about books on Threads. So if you ever see me there, we can geek out together.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, same for me. I'm Dawn Kurtagich pretty much everywhere. I'm rarely on TikToks, but I am more often on Instagram and Threads. I've got So the Madness just came out. I've got The Thorns, which is what I'm describing as my feral girlhood horror, coming out on the 4th of March. And then I've got this wellness horror coming out November 25. And then the folk gothic horror in March 26th. So keep an eye out for all of those.
Busy. And you're on Instagram mostly, right, Dawn?
Yes, mostly. Yeah.
Okay.
And Threads.
And Threads. Yes. I'm on Instagram and Threads as well. I am not on Twitter anymore. I share kind of the same content on TikTok, but I'm there as well. And my second book will be out August 19th. And it is all about women in horror. So I see a lot of comments in here, which is great. A fave of mine this year was My Darling Dreadful Thing too. That was a really great book. So I'm glad that got some shout outs. Thank you guys for commenting, you cute little lurkers. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me, you two. I hope we can do this again really soon.
Absolutely.
So fun. Yes.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Hopefully nobody swallows a cigarette in front of you.
I know, let's hope.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.